Hello and welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fan fiction.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Sorry, we've been MIA.
We've had a time.
We have had a bit of a time. I was running 2 stores for a little over a month.
And I'm pregnant.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little podcast, baby.
Yeah, so it's been a lot.
It has been a lot.
So Katie's been working 70 hours a week, and I've felt like being sick everywhere. Duke, can we help you?
Get your butt out of my face, dude.
He's like, no. Well, we heard that very nicely.
So in our lovely break, we also attended LeakyCon.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
We had a blast. We got to meet Sequoia and Kim of Fanatical Fix.
Oh, it was magical.
It really was. Their panel was hilarious.
Oh my god, I love them. I just love them so much.
They're great. They really are just amazing.
I think that we're going to try to have them on. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's hard. They live on the other side of the country.
Right. There's a 3-hour time difference between where we live and they live.
Yes.
So, we'll reach out. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But we did buy Cards Against Muggles while we were there, so we're going to try to gather the boys together and us together and record us playing it because, oh my god.
The cards are amazing.
They're absolutely perfect.
They're just amazing.
We spent all of last week, instead of recording, making up random combinations together.
Yes. Because that was more important than recording.
Yeah, that was more fun. We also, hadn't seen each other in a month since...
Yeah, since we were both, not really doing a lot other than the one thing we were doing.
Right. Whether it be being ill,
yeah,
because you're growing a human, or working.
Yeah, good times.
So that's also why we haven't been drinking wine in a while.
Yes, yeah.
I drank a couple glasses the last couple times we recorded, but...
Do you want some wine? I can go get you some.
Oh, maybe, yeah. My shirt does say which way to the wine. With a witch on it.
It's fantastic. All right, we're back.
And now I have wine. It's cherry.
Yes, it is cherry. I think it's from Luciano's.
I think that's what the name is. It's delicious.
It's a winery in Pennsylvania near Staggering Unicorn. Did you know, why would I buy wine that I can just go down the street to buy?
No, when that happens, it's because I've brought it over.
Yes.
Because I went to those wineries.
Yep. No, I had to go to the faraway ones.
It's called Eyes as Green as a Fresh Pickled Toad, The Tortured Romance of Lily and James.
I'm ready.
So we've gone to the Marauders era.
Yes.
And I'm excited. Part 1. Ooh, part 1.
Ooh. So fancy. You can tell that we've pre-read this story.
I think we both only read the summary.
That would sound accurate.
It's what we do.
I might have read 2 or 3 sentences in, but probably
My
not.
entire plan was to read this when I was here watching The Dogs for You that time,
Mm-hmm.
but I read a Hermione story instead, which is, on brand for me.
Yeah, seems pretty normal. They're just wrestling outside of the door now.
Wonderful. I mean, it's fine. All right, so part 1, 5th year. Chapter 1, the first meeting. What? Okay, now I'm gonna have to read it because if their first meeting is actually in 5th year, I'm gonna be mad since they're both Gryffindors.
Well, I'm sure that she probably saw him around and
At most, there's 5 students in each gendered dormitory in Gryffindor Tower. They are the same year. They have classes together.
You're telling me that you didn't have a student in any of your classes that you went to every class with, that you just didn't really know anything about, They
live in the same place.
It's fan fiction. Katie, it's fan fiction.
But they live in the same place.
Sometimes you just have to accept the fan fiction.
Maybe they changed one of their houses.
Maybe.
All right. I cannot jump to conclusions. I must read on. She had never really noticed him before, but now she had no choice, for he had just spilled his entire bottle of ink down her favorite green robe, and they were all stained black. It was Friday afternoon, and Lily Evans had been attempting to study in the library when James Potter had stumbled in and sent a bottle of ink flying across the room. She looked down at her robes in shock, then up at James, who looked just as shocked as she did. At first, Lily couldn't think of anything to say, but then she gathered her wits about her and spoke. Tell me you're always this articulate, or is it above and beyond your great Quidditch-playing self to tell a poor girl you're sorry? She snapped, nearly clapping her hand over her mouth in shock. She never lashed out at anyone. Never.
See, so she knew who he was. But
She's also wearing green robes. Is she a Slytherin? And since when can they wear any color robes other than black?
Well, like, it never explicitly said that when they're outside of classes that they couldn't wear
Right.
other things.
That's true. That's true.
I would assume that she would pick Muggle clothing, but
Being a Muggle born, but
whatever.
we'll see. James blinked and shook his head, as if suddenly coming to his senses. Sorry, he said, his cheeks flushing. I really am sorry. I don't usually... I'm sorry. Lily rolled her eyes and took out her wand. She whispered Reparo and watched...
I don't think Reparo would,
No, I think the spell you were looking for was either Scourgify or Turgio.
Yep.
But we'll just go with Reparo because it's in the text. Whispered Reparo, and then watched as the ink flew back into the bottle and the bottle put itself back together. Or we could have finished the sentence.
Well, the ink still wouldn't have gone back in the bottle, but it would have repaired the bottle.
Right, but I'll allow it until they tell me exactly why Lily and James are just meeting now in 5th year.
Okay.
It's no big deal, she said, handing him back the ink bottle. James nodded and accepted it. You know, when I walked in, you were just, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry, thanks. James stammered, seeming unable to string together words to form a comprehensive sentence. Lily sat back in her chair and crossed her arms, lifting an eyebrow in amusement. So is that all James Potter, the famous popular Quidditch captain, has to say for himself? She asked, bemused, twirling her quill around in circles. Twirling her quill around in circles on the paper. What a shame. I would have had expected more. What was she teasing him? Mocking him? Since when did Lily mock anybody? I say interesting stuff, James said desperately, apparently still at a loss for words. Lily laughed and smiled. Don't worry about it, she said, but if you'll excuse me, I have to study. She stood up and gathered her books into her arms. Without saying goodbye, she began to walk out of the library. James, who had dropped a stack of books upon entering and spilling his ink all over Lily, stooped to pick up his things. Lily, who was prepared to walk out of the library and not look back, found herself pausing and turning to look back at him. Why was he so popular anyways? Honestly, he wasn't even that cute, and he certainly didn't seem to have favor for conversation. And besides all that, he was a klutz. Hey, she found himself calling to him. He straightened up, books in his arms, surprised. You better watch it, or you might find yourself with a pint of pumpkin juice down your front. And with that, she smirked and flounced out of the library. Flounced is such a good word.
It really is.
It doesn't get used enough.
No. I feel like that was a really good spot to use it.
It was. Well, where had that come from? She never got to have the last word in anything, and she couldn't remember the last time she had smirked. Lily was soft-spoken, quiet, studious, an introverted one. As she walked back to the Ravenclaw common room, Thank you. Thank you. Fine. As she walked back to the Ravenclaw common room, she made a mental note not to ever speak to James Potter. What rude, uncharacteristic thing would she find herself doing next? As Lily turned and walked out of the library, James promptly stumbled over himself, dropping all of his books again. What was wrong with him? And what was with that girl? He didn't even know her name. All he knew was she had to be the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. And that included the Vila he'd met while on vacation in Bulgaria with his parents when he was 9. But that was another story.
Well, okay then, James Potter.
Also, a Vila when you're 9? I really hope the Vila didn't turn on the charm for a 9-year-old.
I feel like it was probably just like it was on and like he was like there.
In the vicinity.
Yeah.
That was why he spilled his ink bottle in the first place. Upon entering the library, he found himself staring at this amazingly beautiful girl. She had been sitting by the window, scribbling on a piece of parchment. The sunlight had been streaming in through the window behind her, lighting her fiery red hair and creating a halo around her face, making her look very much like an angel. That was when he tripped over himself and sent the ink bottle flying across the room. A brilliant move on his part, he had to say. First tripping over himself, then staining her brilliant green robes with ink, and third, just standing there and staring at her like an idiot and stammering at her. The only comprehensible sentence he'd uttered in of itself didn't really make that much sense. I say interesting stuff, he muttered to himself in disgust. What a line, James, what a line. Way to get a girl's attention. Girl? What girl? Said a very familiar voice. James looked up, not surprised to see his best friend in the world, Sirius Black, standing there looking devilishly handsome as usual. Like father, like son.
Yep, as always.
Like father, like son. He was smiling mischievously. Any mention of a girl got him going. James only scowled at him. What'd I do? Sirius asked, spinning a chair around and sitting on it, his chest resting on the back. You look handsome, James said irritably. James, you're not hitting on me, are you? Sirius asked, smirking. Shut up, James snapped. What wizard's cursing your mood? Sirius asked, plucking one of James' books up off the floor and flipping through it absent-mindedly. It was upside down.
Sounds canon.
Not a wizard, James said, slamming his book on the table and grabbing a chair for himself. A witch. Ah, a witch, Sirius said. Someone finally stolen your heart? More like my sanity, James muttered, flipping open his Transfiguration book. What? She's got you all tongue-tied? Sirius had been through every dating dilemma known to man. That would be an understatement. Who is it? Kim? Lorelai? Melody? She's not a Gryffindor. I don't know her name. You don't know her name? Sirius exclaimed. Who in the world is she? What house is she in? I don't know, James shrugged. She was wearing green robes. Slytherin? Is she a Slytherin? I didn't say she was in Slytherin. I said she was wearing green robes, James said, irritated. Well, describe her. I probably know who she is. Red hair, amazing green eyes like emerald. No, something really green. I don't know, like fresh pickled toad? Sirius? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know, like a fresh pickled toad? Sirius suggested. James shot him a look. Not exactly, but anyway, red hair, green eyes, milky white skin, no freckles, the most beautiful girl in the universe. James trailed off. Yep, she's got you hook, line, and sinker, buddy, Sirius said, smirking. Never thought I'd see you reeled in. I'm not reeled in, James protested. I've known about her existence for 5 minutes? And all she's managed to do is bite my head off. Bite your head off? Doesn't sound like her, but it's gotta be, Sirius said. Well, who is she? Lily Evans, Ravenclaw. Top of her class in just about every subject. Favorite subject is charms. She's 5'6", 135 pounds, usually quite reserved, and she likes wearing green because it accents her eyes. After she leaves Hogwarts, she wants to... What is this? Published somewhere? James said, interrupting his friend's speech. No, she's Melody's best friend. I never hear the end of it. And you should know her, James. I mean, she is a prefect. She is? James said, bewildered. You really need to get out more. Serious? Yeah? Do me a favor, would you? Yeah? Shut up. So, what evil, troublemaking scheme do you think Sirius is going to come up with this time? Melody Caldwell?
Sure.
Sure. Melody Caldwell asked of Remus Lupin, plopping down in a cozy armchair right across from his. She stuck a multicolored lollipop in her mouth, seemingly unaware that the candy was turning her brilliantly blonde hair bright blue. That's a cool lollipop.
Yeah, let's get some of those.
I want that. Remus, biting his lip to keep from laughing at her hair, tried to answer as normally as possible. 5 Galleons says it's something to do with Snape. I'll bet you 5 it's Miss Norris. Melody shot back, sucking on the lollipop, which started turning her hair green. Deal, Remus said, smiling evilly, when the same time remembering he'd spent all of his money at Hogsmeade last week. Oh well.
Whoops.
At that moment, just as Melody's hair was beginning to go purple, Peter Pettigrew stumbled into Gryffindor common room, wheezing and panting, his face red. Remus straightened up a little and turned to his friend, but Melody ignored him and continued sucking leisurely on her lollipop, which was now turning her hair an interesting shade of pink. She didn't much like Peter, and he didn't seem to like her. As a result, they completely ignored each other. She wondered what Sirius really would come up with for their next evil scheme, and suddenly remembered she'd spent her last 5 galleons on 3 bags of magical lollipops. All she had left was 2 sickles and a nut. A canut? A nut? What do you say?
I usually say canut.
Me too. I don't know why I just got rid of the K.
I can't think of how they say it in the movies.
I think they say canut.
Okay.
All right. On all she had left was 2 sickles and a canut. She hoped Sirius would be going for Mrs. Norris because she could sure use another 5 galleons. Peter had just finished telling Remus about his run-in with Snape when James and Sirius burst into the common room arguing terribly about something. And I'm not in love with a girl I met 5 minutes ago, James was saying, but Sirius wouldn't let him finish. Sure you are. Got stars in your eyes. It's pathetic. I wouldn't go out with her if she was the last witch, blah, blah, blah. You're a horrible liar. She's completely rude. You deserve a good kick in the rear. I don't even know her. In complete denial. As we're talking about denial, she's perfectly cute. Why don't you ask Melody out? Shut it, Sirius snapped, glaring at his best friend and glancing nervously over at Melody, who was completely oblivious to the whole thing. She was still sucking absent-mindedly on her lollipop, which was now nearly gone. Sirius laughed as he saw her hair being turned an interesting shade of red. Hey, Sirius, Melody said, noticing him. So what detention-worthy scheme have you cooked up now? Interesting hair, Sirius said, ignoring her question and smiling at her bright red coif, which was rapidly changing to another color. You like it? Melody asked, smiling cheesily. You look better, blonde, Sirius said. Melody shrugged and finished her sucker. She looked at the stick for a moment and then shrugged and threw it over her shoulder, oblivious to the fact that it landed in a third year's hair.
Rude.
Yeah, real rude. Also, just throwing your trash on the floor because I'm assuming you're like, oh, house elf will get it. But rude. At least throw it in the fire, which I'm
Yeah.
sure is crackling because it always is.
Yeah. Just throw it in the fireplace, set it on a table. There's no trash cans anywhere.
Like, she picked up a lock of her hair and looked at it. Damn, she said, cursing her neon orange hair. That's the 4th time in a row it's been neon orange. Different results every time, my ass. She muttered. The Marauders laughed. Melody stuck out her tongue. Anyway, Sirius, have you come up with anything? A devilish grin spread across Sirius's face. I have something to show you all. Come with me, he said. Melody, James, and Remus smiled, but Peter whimpered. Come on, guys. We're not going to break the rules again, are we? He whined. I have detention. They always make me go with Filch and do some really horrible cleaning without magic. Melody rolled her eyes. All detentions are without magic, you idiot. That's why they're called detention. Peter sniffed and looked at her indignantly. They are not. There was that one time when we all went down to Hogsmeade to investigate that murder. We got to use magic then. Yeah, and so much good it did us too. In that stupid old office going through piles of useless stuff. Hey, I liked that office, Sirius said, his eyes sparkling. Melody laughed. Yeah, only after you turned the desk into an elephant. All the Marauders laughed at this. Hey, I was bored. What can I say? Sirius shrugged. Come on, let's go. And Peter, Melody said as they left. What? He asked sulkily. Don't be such a baby. Have fun studying? Mimi Ramirez asked Lily, entering the common room. Mimi was one of Lily's best friends. A little boy crazy at that. At that moment, she was concentrating very hard on painting her fingernails red. Well, red and gold to be precise. She had already painted them gold and was painting on strips of red. Not really, Lily answered, noticing Mimi's fingernails and frowned. Mimi, what are you doing? Painting my nails. What does it look like? In case you haven't noticed, you're painting them red and gold. So? Mimi asked, dipping her brush back into the container and wiping off a little and setting to work on her next fingernail. Mimi, we're in Ravenclaw. Those are Gryffindor colors. Mimi rolled her eyes. Well, I knew that, silly. I'm painting them for the Quidditch match tomorrow. Mimi, we're playing Gryffindor tomorrow. Have you completely lost your mind? The rest of the Ravenclaws are going to slaughter you. Well, that's why the rest of the Ravenclaws aren't going to find out, Mimi said matter-of-factly, finishing up her nails on her right hand and picking up her wand and muttering an instant drying spell, and then she set to work on her left hand. Oh, and how's that? Lily asked curiously. Because, Mimi said, I'll be sitting with the Gryffindors and none of the Ravenclaws ever have to know. Lily plopped down in a chair, perplexed. May I ask why all of a sudden you're supporting Gryffindor? She asked, her lips twitching. Last month, she had been avidly supporting Ravenclaw because her crush on one of the Ravenclaw beaters, Adam Johnson. I wonder who it is this month, Lily mused. Because, Mimi gushed, James Potter, so cute. In Sirius Black, he's even cuter. Mimi forgot her nails for a moment and leaned back in her chair with a dreamy look on her face. I can't decide which is better. Which sounds better, Mimi Potter or Mimi Black? Mimi Potter, Mimi Black. I can't decide. What do you think?
Oh, to be a teenager.
I know. Like to be 15 again. Lily sighed irritably. What did she think? She thought she had had enough James Potter for one day, thank you. She decided to change the subject. I don't know, she shrugged. But who exactly are you going to be sitting with? Remus Lupin, Mimi said promptly. Just as cute. And get this, James and Sirius and Remus are all best friends. How amazing is that? The 3 cutest guys in school, and they're all best friends. Mimi's eyes glazed over. Lily laughed. Maybe you should be thinking about Mimi Lupin then, if you're so blown away by all of them. Mimi gasped. Maybe, she said. I hadn't thought of that. She went back to painting her nails. Lily shook her head and went up to the dorm room. This is awesome, Melody declared. How exactly did you create a room? Remus asked, looking around at what Sirius has dubbed their new headquarters. Yes, James agreed. And why the chamber pots?
Good question.
Sirius smiled. That's for me to know and you all to find out, he said gleefully. But I'll have you know the chamber pots are for cover. Oh, are for cover. He said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. So, if anyone happens to stumble upon in which they shouldn't, because it's guarded by a password, but if they should, they'll just see a bunch of chamber pots and think they're crazy and leave. It's brilliant, Sirius declared triumphantly.
True.
I would go, what the fuck?
I feel like there's so many chamber pots in here. This is weird. I'm leaving.
What? Where did this room come from?
Why do we have so many chamber pots?
Okay, I gotta go. Yes, it's a room of crazy chamber pots, Melody said unenthusiastically. What? You don't like my chamber pots? Sirius said, pretending to be hurt. Melody opened her mouth to respond, but James interrupted. Enough with the chamber pots, he said. Sirius and I have come up with a brilliant plan. Oh, really? Melody asked, interested. Do tell. We've come up with a way to get Snape back for cursing your nose off in potions, Sirius said to Melody. Yes, Melody said. She was still sore about the whole incident. Last week, during double potions with the Slytherin, Melody and Snape had been paired together. They were supposed to be preparing a truthfulness potion, otherwise known as Veritaserum, but they were having a row instead. You weren't supposed to put in the bat spleen yet, you idiot, Melody shrieked. I'm an idiot, Snape said indignantly. You're the one who just spilled all of our dragon blood onto the floor. It didn't all go onto the floor. And anyways, I wouldn't have spilled it if you hadn't pushed me. You pushed me first. I was reaching for the eyeballs. Well, you deserved it. Well, if I deserved dragon's blood on my robes, then I suppose you deserved boiling potion on yours, Melody said, tipping the cauldron over and watching in satisfaction as Snape howled in pain, trying to get the boiling potion off of his skin and robes. Still in pain, he reached for his wand and screeched a spell, at which point many things happened at once. 1, the teacher ran over and started yelling at both of them. 2, Snape's skin began to melt away. Ooh.
That's horrid.
3, James and Sirius set off wet start fireworks in Jamie Backstone, an annoying Slytherin girl's, cauldron, causing half the potions lab to be soaked in Veritaserum, and Jamie, who happened to swallow some, start spouting out that she hated transfigurations, hated the potions master, hated Professor Throne, and had a secret crush on Remus Lupin, among other things. 4, Melody's nose fell off. "You little," Melody began, but Professor Throne was yelling his head off at the entire class so loudly that no one could hear what she was saying. Between the howls of pain, Snape saw Melody without a nose and started laughing. James and Sirius, who had been caught up in laughing at Jamie and teasing Remus about her having a crush on him, suddenly noticed Melody's noseless face. Remus shied away from Sirius and James, glad he was out of the center of attention. James started laughing so hard he couldn't stop, and Sirius, although he was laughing, ran over and tried to fix her nose back on, but he couldn't. So he ended up escorting her to the hospital wing. The three lost hundreds of points for Gryffindors and got detention for 2 straight weeks. The Marauders really hated potions after that. Melody was brought out of her trance by Remus, who was speaking to her. "You owe me 5 galleons." "Damn! Lily, my dearest Lily, it's been forever. How are you?" Lily looked up from her spot on the large blue beanbag chair to see Melody Caldwell appear in the Ravenclaw common room. "What are you doing here?" she asked, slightly annoyed. "Why, visiting my dear old chum Lily, of course," Melody said, grinning cheekily and plopping down on the beanbag chair across from Lily. Lily sighed. "What do you want?" "I don't want anything, old friend. Just the pleasure of your company," Melody said a little too cheerily. Lily rolled her eyes and shook her head, smiled, and put down her charms book. "Okay, what is it?" she asked. Melody sighed, breaking down. "I need your help. I have to seek revenge." "For Snape cursing your nose off?" Lily asked, the sides of her mouth twitching in amusement. "It's not funny," Melody said, glaring and poking her tongue out at Lily. Lily just giggled. "Well, what do you need my help for?" "Me and the guys need to learn how to do a little charm thoroughly to embarrass him. It's rather advanced and none of us are especially good at charms. Well, nothing you shake a stick at anyways. At least not compared to you, so we need your help." "Who are all of the guys?" Lily asked, raising an eyebrow. Lately, Melody had been hanging out with a group of Gryffindor boys a lot, and Lily wasn't clear on who they were. "Well, there's Sirius, of course," Melody began, ticking off their names on her finger as she went. "Then Remus Lupin and Peter Pettigrew." Melody stuck her tongue out at the name and made a face. That's fine. And Lily laughed. "And then James Potter." Lily groaned at the mention of James's name. "What?" Melody asked, clearly confused. "I keep hearing that name. What is it with James Potter?" Lily said furiously. "Well, he is Quidditch captain and extremely popular and devilishly handsome, although not as handsome as Sirius, of course." "Of course?" Lily rolled her eyes. Melody had a thing for Sirius, along with just about 50% of the school. James and Sirius were supposed to be the heartthrobs of the school, and Lily wondered why she seemed to be the only one who hadn't noticed either of them. Well, that was a lie. She had noticed Sirius, but that was because her best friend had a crush on him, even though she refused to admit it. And besides that, Melody was right. Sirius was devilishly handsome. Yeah, that's fine. It's close enough. And certainly more handsome than James, which didn't seem too hard to Lily, considering she didn't find James cute in the least. I think with how much you're thinking about him, you definitely do find him cute.
Yes. I think she's still in the denial stage where you're like, no, he's not cute.
No, I don't like him.
No, I don't like him.
Why?
God.
No, he's gross. He's a boy. What? Do you not like James? Melody asked. No, not really, Lily said. Not really? Melody said, raising an eyebrow. What is going on in the world of Lily? Nothing, Lily rolled her eyes. I just had a run-in with James in the library today, and he was very articulate, she said sarcastically. Honestly, I don't know what people see in him. He's not that great. He couldn't even string 2 sentences together. Really? What'd he say? Not much of anything, just a lot of tripping over his words. Then the one coherent sentence he could manage to say was, I say interesting stuff. Now, there's a conversation starter. He was stumbling over his words. That doesn't sound like James, Melody said, having a hard time picturing the confident, collected mischief maker tripping over anything. Well, we're even then, Lily mused, because I didn't sound much like myself either. What'd you say? Melody asked with interest. I practically told the poor guy off, but he deserves it after spilling ink all over my robes. He what? Melody cried. Lily shook her head. Long story. Well, explain it to me. Lily sighed and explained the events of this morning as well as she could. Well, it's obvious, Melody said. What? He likes you, Melody said matter-of-factly. Lily said, rolling her eyes, but her cheeks tinged pink. Melody, what are you doing here? You know you're not supposed to be in the Ravenclaw common room. If Professor Flitwick comes in and checks on us and sees you here again, you'll get suspended. Well, that was bad luck, Melody said. Give it a rest. Give it a rest. Lily rolled her eyes again. I told you only to come in here for emergencies, Lily said. I shouldn't have allowed you to come here at all. Well, what's the fun in that? Melody pouted. Besides, this was an emergency, she declared. Yeah, and what was the emergency? Lily asked, raising an eyebrow. I haven't seen you for a whole... Melody paused dramatically, thinking for a moment before counting. 2 days, she continued. Yes, 2 days. And you've been in so much pain and torment over it, haven't you? Lily said dryly. It's been unbearable, Melody wailed. Everyone in the common room turned to look at her. Lily looked around and tried to keep from laughing. That's enough, Melody, she said, smiling and shaking her head. Okay, Melody said, snapping back to normal immediately. If you could call anything about Melody normal. Nice hair, Lily said, noticing Melody's neon orange locks. Been eating lollipops again? She asked. Melody nodded. I was trying to get something besides neon orange, but it didn't work, she sighed, looking as though she was terribly disappointed. I guess I'll just have to give it another go next weekend, she said. She only ate the suckers on Friday because it took the effects of the lollipop 2 days to wear off, and on top of turning her hair different colors, the suckers seemed to have an effect on her listening ability as well. So if she ate one during the day of the week besides Friday, and she had to go to class with the effects of the sucker still on her, and her professor kicked her out of class for a combination of reasons, every time she did, the main one would usually be getting bored and starting to blow up desks.
Sounds like a thing that she's done multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Are you excited about the Quidditch match tomorrow? Lily asked. Melanie was the beater on the Gryffindor Quidditch team. She played opposite Sirius, who was the other beater. Melody nodded and smiled evilly. We're going to kick you Ravenclaw's butts, she declared triumphantly. Several people turned to her and glared. Keep it down, would you? Lily hissed. You know you're not supposed to be in here. Sorry, Melody said, her eyes twinkling. Not looking sorry at all, but we're still going to kick your butts, she said, although much quieter. No way, Lily said coolly. Ravenclaw rocks. We are so much better than you. Just look at our mascot. It's an eagle. We're obviously going to be much better flyers. Bet you 10 galleons Ravenclaw loses. Lily grinned. You haven't got 10 galleons. And that is the end of this episode. I think that's everything for today.
Yeah. We're going to go eat some food because I'm hungry.
Same.
All right.
Bye, guys.
We'll actually probably see you again next week.
Well, we did start a story, so we should.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll actually, keep going this time.
We'll try.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the trap door.
Please leave us a review on Facebook or iTunes. It would literally mean the world to us.
It really would.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Through the Trapdoor 16 or on Twitter at The Trapdoor.
And please send us an email at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com with any story suggestions. And as always, join us again next Saturday as we travel through the trapdoor.